Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Express Entry live Q&A. I'm your host, Mark Holthe, coming to you from the beautiful province of Alberta, Canada, and the offices of Stringham LLP, where I work here in Lethbridge, the fine city of Lethbridge. Thanks for tuning in. It is another beautiful sunny Tuesday afternoon, and it's right now about 12:05 p.m., so I'm just a few minutes late, but hey, that's what you get when you're not dealing with a professional here. So we'll wait for a few minutes as people tune in and connect. Those of you who are watching on the Canadian Immigration Institute, remember, if you want to watch this live, all you have to do is get your Facebook account and request to join the Express Entry Law private Facebook group. And while we're waiting for people to connect in, I'll just flip over to my screen here and I'll show you how you do it. So you go to your Facebook account and then you're going to search for this group right here, which is the Express Entry Law. That's what you search for. And I can guarantee if you search for that, you're going to find it, because we're pretty much the largest group dedicated exclusively to Express Entry in all of Facebook land. So we're sitting right now at about 120,000 members, 334. And and for those of you who are also tuning in, that are watching live, actually I better get rid of this here, it's in the way. Those of you who are watching live, I want you to realize that I am not going to be doing this at this time any longer. In fact, I have to make a change because I now have a conflict that's preventing me from being able to do this at noon on Tuesdays. Well, it's a personal choice, but I have something else that's just slightly more important than doing these every noon on Tuesdays. So there is a poll going on right now on the Express Entry Law private Facebook group that I want you all to pay attention to. And this poll is an opportunity for you to vote on the time of day that you feel would be best if we couldn't do it right now at noon on every Tuesday, Mountain Standard Time here in Canada. I'm just clearing off something off of my screen here. So you can see here within this poll, right now the options I have is Thursday afternoons at 3, Tuesday mornings at 9, or Thursday mornings at 9. And I'm trying to do it during my regular day. So Thursday afternoon at 3 will mean that's some time I probably won't have for file work, but this is important and I want to keep doing it for you guys. So if you can vote, you can see right now we're sitting at, I just posted this a few hours ago. We're sitting at about 36 in favor of 3 p.m. on Thursday afternoons. And then in the mornings, Tuesday and Thursday, there are fewer people that have voted. So go there. Now's your chance to vote for that. And then we'll see which one ends up ranking the highest. And that is when I will shift and start doing these EE Live Q&As. All right. Okay, well, that's great. Well, I'm going to connect back in here and try to find the actual feed here. One thing you guys probably, I'm not sure if you're aware, you should be able to hear me okay. One thing that's really been frustrating me lately is the fact that I have, let me just test out my sound here. I think it's working okay. Yeah, it's okay. I'm just trying to make sure that the audio is working. You guys can give me a thumbs up if it's too loud or too quiet. I am having a good friend come over and help me with some of my technical issues because right now the issue I'm having is a little bit of a background humming, and you guys can probably hear it. And I can't figure out where it's coming from. It's driving me crazy. So hopefully you guys will be patient with me as I'm trying to sort out the audio to make it perfect. At least I can make audio sound good. So that's kind of where we're at here. And people are piling in. That's great. Always post. Let me know where you're listening from. Okay. So we've got Anil's here and the Latino Cafe Lethbridge. Awesome. One of the finest groups in all of Lethbridge. They also have an awesome little radio show. So welcome. Thanks for joining. Make is here. Hi. Lucky. Mark, anytime, we love you. Well, that's great. But my love is only for one person, and that's my wife. So I'll like you guys a lot, but I reserve the love for just my wife and my kids and my mother and my brothers and my family. All right. All right, so Rafi's already asking questions. Hold those off, my friend, and we'll get to those in a little bit. Syed says, may Allah bless you and your family. Thank you, Syed. That really means a lot. I appreciate it. Afsar has got some questions as well, and we're going to need to definitely get to those for sure. So we'll hold off on that for a second. Afsar, I will let you know when you can post, and then that's when I'll start answering the questions. Okay, so we've got Ali from DXB. Lucky says, late cute dog. Okay, that's interesting. I have no clue what he's saying there. Okay, you guys can post as well in the comment section where you're listening in, so just post it there. Okay, Afsar says, there's nothing wrong having some bromance. Yeah, there is. I'll keep my bromances for my brothers, though. Sumet is from Mount Abu, India. Interesting. I've never had anyone from there tune in before. Awesome. All right, so we've greeted folks. So let's jump in. I have a great group of questions that have been sent in via email that I'm going to be starting off covering right here. And once I get through those, then I'm going to shift and then I'm going to answer all of the live questions from the listeners that are tuning in. I also want to send a shout out to Stephanie, who is very, very kindly helping me with this to make sure that everything is working okay and that the sound is okay. And that on occasion, if there's a link or something that I need to be posted, Stephanie's going to help me with that, which is awesome. I'm so excited to have her with us. And I also want to let you guys know that I'm starting to add my team internationally. So I have my first international consultant who's going to be working with me out of the Philippines. And so she'll be joining me, and some of you who will be interacting with me will have someone a little bit closer into your time zone if that's where you're coming from. And slowly over time, my hope is to actually grow the team internationally so that we have people in all regions. Yes, even Nigeria, if that's the case. So someone came back last EE Live Q&A and said, what about Nigeria? All right. Okay, so let's jump into these questions. And these questions are actually really good because they have given me an opportunity to talk about some things that may not actually relate to the question, but they trigger the need to discuss it here in our group. So the first one here, this one is from Tom and Sally. And they say, hi, Stephanie and Mark. Please give us a definitive answer as to which ECA provider will assess trade qualifications. For example, a qualification obtained by way of a 3-year apprenticeship. And then they go on to say, your step-by-step guide is unbeatable. Tell everyone watching the live that we give it 2 thumbs up and our stamp of approval. All prospective Canadian PR should purchase it. Okay, I never chose this just because they were plugging my course for me. But they say, we're so impressed. We've already emailed through to book a consult. Yes, Tom, I think I did see a consult coming through to Stephanie for you guys. I look forward to connecting with you. Now, back to your question, which really forms the lead question on the title for the EE Live Q&A today, and that's trade applications. So one of the questions that people ask more than any other is, how can I get my trade qualifications assessed? And in this case, a 3-year apprenticeship. Well, I can tell you guys that you can't. It's not possible, because none of the educational credential assessment agencies will actually do it. So if you're trying to qualify for express entry through the Federal Skilled Worker Program, you're not going to get any education points for those 3-year apprenticeship that you worked. And I know it sucks. It was one of the discussions we had back in January the 1st, 2015, when express entry was first created. But the reality is the Federal Skilled Worker Program is not for you, because they created a separate program called the Federal Skilled Trade Program, and it's that one that you're going to use for the purposes of immigrating to Canada. And usually 2 times a year, IRCC will issue a special round of invitations to federal skilled trade individuals who have profiles in the pool. And the reality is, because you're not getting the education points, your comprehensive ranking system score is going to be a lot lower. And so because of that, the Federal Skilled Trade Program is designed to give trade level individuals with the right requirements the ability to immigrate to Canada through a separate program, because they're not being compared against all the other people that have master's degrees, etc., and get all of those comprehensive ranking system points for their education. So we'll talk about this in our consult. I'm looking forward to meeting with you guys. But Tom and Sally, right now, it's not going to happen. You actually won't get educational credential assessment points for the comprehensive ranking system. So that's the reality. So I'll give you more information in the consult. And for those of you, I will have a separate I'll create a separate little video dedicated to the Federal Skilled Trade Program, because we don't talk a lot about that within our group. Within my Express Entry course, I do cover details of the program itself. But when we're just talking about this general group, there's not nearly as many people interested in going through the Federal Skilled Trade Program as there are the Federal Skilled Worker Program or the Canadian Experience class. So we don't do a lot of talking about it. All right, but great question, Tom and Sally, and I look forward to connecting with you. And thanks so much for plugging the course. And for those of you who are wondering, what are they talking about? If you're a new person watching this, it's my Express Entry Complete Step-by-Step Guide to doing it yourself. And one little quick plug as well, I'll just shift my screen here for you guys, and then I'm just going to pull it up. And if you type in CanadianImmigrationInstitute.com, it will take you right to the course itself. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time, because a lot of people who've been watching these videos have seen it quite a bit. But if you go here, you can go to this site, and it will give you an overview of all of the different lessons that I have. Everything from learning the basics to preparing to submit your profile to actually submitting your profile. And then it even goes on to your electronic application for permanent residence that you submit after you get your ITA, document checklist. And then those are pretty awesome, because they're complete walkthroughs that I demonstrate exactly how to do it. But the reality is, where the real substance is, in many cases, is all the other videos in the member resource section that have topics on all of the tricky issues that I cover, some of them within our group, our Express Entry Law Facebook group, within these live questionnaires, so these live Q&As. But there's a lot of content that's only in the course that helps to answer some of the most difficult issues that people have. All right, so there you go. So thank you. Thank you for that question, Tom and Sally. Okay, next question. This one is from Shroff. And Shroff says, hi there, would be extremely thankful for providing a current official link to know which occupations are in demand in different provinces, to the upcoming PNPs in the next few days per week. So I'm assuming, I'm not quite sure what that question is. And then 3, please let me know the options available for an Express Entry profile applicant with low CRS, having no connection, local education, or employment. Okay, so the first one off the bat, which occupations are in demand in each different province? Well, you just have to go to each of those provinces. And so I'll take just a couple seconds and I'll show you guys, just because I want to be as helpful as I possibly can, but these change all the time. So let's start with the Saskatchewan Immigrant Nominee Program, Occupations in Demand list. If you go to this link right here, and Stephanie, you can even post this for them, and I'm going to shrink this down because it's kind of big for everybody to see. This program right here has the list posted. So you can see right here, there's everything from land surveyors, psychiatrists, medical radiation technicians, paramedics, all of these ECA early childhood educators. So these are the ones for the Saskatchewan Immigrant Nominee Program. But I'll be honest, there are not a lot of provinces that have them. And if you go to the, let's see, the Nova Scotia occupation in demand, and we excuse me, we go here for the for this stream. Actually, let me just go back, see if we can find it here. Okay, so these are the in-demand occupations. You will see here that there are 2 categories. There's category A, and that's for people that are in Canada. They have 1 year of skilled work experience, and they they have a job offer from a Nova Scotian employer. So that's category A for Nova Scotia. The one that Schroff is talking about here is actually category B, where you don't need a job offer, but you have to have an occupation that's on the demand list. You have to have 67 points. Well, you can see right here that category B is now closed and there's no list posted. So it's only when they open it up that they release the list so that you can see what's available and whether or not your occupation actually fits. With a lot of the other provinces, these lists, and I'm just going to show these two, the Saskatchewan Immigrant Nominee Program here and the Nova Scotia Demand Express Entry category. These two programs are the ones that people are most typically looking for. But there are others in different provinces, and you just have to go to the provincial website. You have to monitor it, and if you are always bookmarking this SIMP occupation and demand list, this is the one really that drives the ship. Okay? All right, hopefully that answered that question. Let's close out of this because I forgot that was up. And and let's add a little bit of brightness. Looks like the sun's going down here a little bit, so add a little bit of brightness here to me. Okay, let's jump to the next one. The next question that we have on our list is from Rohit. And Rohit has actually got a lot of questions built in here. And one of the things that I'm unable to do within this EE Live Q&A is to read through a big, long email that's all about specific concerns that you particularly have. But the reason I'm going to address your question, at least peripherally, Rohit, is because you face a problem that many, many other people have. And so Rohit has got an issue because he's found now a number of mistakes that he's made within his application when he filed his electronic application for permanent residence. And so it's submitted. And those of you who have not gone through Express Entry before will realize that when it comes to submitting your profile, you can always go back and update or make changes. But once you get an ITA and submit your electronic application for permanent residence, it's locked in. You can't just go and change your answers. So what happens sometimes for some people when they realize that they've made a mistake is that if the mistake is something that would materially affect your application, and I can't go through all the different things that would cause problems for you, then one option is to try. And I say try because an officer doesn't have to accept it. You agree that all the information in your questions that you've answered within your EAPR and the information that you've provided, you attest that that is true, correct, and complete when you acknowledge and submit that application. So going back and saying, oh no, I made a mistake, the officer doesn't have to accept that. But if you do find problems, and I get lots of consults from people where we try to sort out, does it make a difference, updating it or correcting it? Is it really something that's material, something that's going to go to whether or not your application is approved or rejected? And remember, sometimes the answers that you actually give could be serious enough to be considered a misrepresentation that will result in you getting a 5-year bar from applying to immigrate to Canada because of that misrepresentation. So it can be really serious. So in your case, Rohit, we'll need to go through this via a consult. So I can't go through all of your issues that you've put into your email here. But for those of you who do have noticed problems, the way you would deal with them is through a case-specific inquiry. You try to correct it. There's a section where you can upload documents if you've somehow got a reference letter, let's say, that's incorrect and you need to correct it. You do have the ability to upload documents. So you would get the documents corrected. You would definitely provide a letter of explanation explaining what was wrong, how the mistake occurred. Try to show that it wasn't your fault or that it was a complete and total just error, but it wasn't a misrepresentation, which is not always easy to show because you guys are competing with people all over the world that have no problems lying, cheating, creating fraudulent documents. It happens all the time. So officers tend to think in their mind, if they see something that looks a little fishy, they tend to say to themselves, this person's trying to pull a fast one on me. And then that's how they start looking at the application, as if you're trying to lie to them. And they start to doubt everything. So if you do find a mistake, and it is something that's material, that really goes to whether or not your application could be approved or rejected, or a finding of misrep, then you use the case-specific inquiry to try to rectify that. Now, I'll give one other tip within this process. If your application is hung up, and I know IRCC will not like me telling people to do this, but If your application is stalled out and it's been over 6 months and there's been no forward movement, then in those circumstances, it might be in your best interest to do an access to information request and obtain the GCMS notes. Those notes are always going to be 2 months old. But if your application is hung up, there might be something in those notes that tells you what the officer is looking at, what's concerning them. Maybe they see some inconsistencies in what you've answered for your work history and the reference letters that you've provided, or maybe they're having trouble reaching out to the employer. There's a lot of different reasons why people would potentially have challenging issues or problems within their application. But an access to information request can sometimes give you a little bit of a history to see if something is occurring that's holding your application up. And then you're able to almost preempt the request letter that the officers will often send to you. You'll get an email that says you have a new a letter in your profile. You'll go there and you'll see request letter, and then you'll click on it, and then it will open up what the officer wants you to provide. In some cases, it's a Schedule A background declaration because, as is the case for one of my clients recently, who only booked a consult and submitted their application on their own, they had listed 2 different locations as their on their address history for the same period of time. So they actually listed it as if they were living in 2 places at the same time, which for immigration purposes, it doesn't work. Now, you may have 2 residences, but you can only be living in one place at one time. So I think that's why they issued the Schedule A request for that client. But if you do an ATIP and you see something that looks like it's hanging up your application, you can sometimes be preemptive and try to respond to it in a proactive way. But I wouldn't just do that, just do an ATIP and send all these case-specific inquiries with little tiny updates to your application that really are meaningless. Often officers will get annoyed with that, and you don't want an annoyed officer adjudicating your application. All right, so there is the question from Rohit, which actually wasn't answered, his question, but opened up an opportunity for me to explain a bunch of other things that are really, really important when you notice that you've made a mistake in your EAPR. Now, with that being said, I want to give you guys all a significant piece of advice. Don't just submit it on your own and then without having someone else look at it. And someone that you can trust, who can go through things for you and look at it with a separate set of eyes to see some of the things, the mistakes that you may have made that you didn't realize. Immigration is ruthless, guys. If there are mistakes, yes, they're counseled to be reasonable, but they're also counseled to be efficient and fast in processing to maintain the 6-month processing time. So if they're in a situation where they've got a file and there's doubts or concerns they have, they can very well just return it and say it's incomplete, and then you're out of the system. And what are the consequences of that? Let's say you're one of the individuals that just recently received an invitation to apply earlier in the year or the end of last year at 438 points, comprehensive ranking system points. That's how low it dropped at the very end. And let's say your application gets returned and you have to go back into the pool. Well, what's the likelihood that it's going to ever drop down to 438 again? And so if that's the case, one little mistake, although it might not be a big deal, could result in you forever losing your opportunity to immigrate to Canada. Now, I'm not a fearmonger. I'm not someone out here who's just trying to line my pockets with client money by scaring you into hiring me. That's not the case. But you need to have someone who you can trust to take a second look at it. And that's part of the reason why I made the decision to offer something different than just my full service representation. And so what I created, and I'll just show you guys here quick so that you can see, if you go into our group here, and I'm going to go back to the main screen, and into our section right at the top, the announcement section, you can see here that often only the first one appears, which is the one I've pinned, which is the poll. But if you click on See All, I actually have a bunch of other old EE Live Q&As and other things in here. But if you scroll down all the way to the bottom of all of these, you will see right here my service level structure. And one thing that I have, each of them, including what I charge, what's included with the service package, I actually have what I call my silver plan. And this silver plan is the one I use for people who just they want to complete it themselves. They want to save themselves $2,500 and just have me review the application. Now, it's not just a review. We go through everything forensically. In fact, we do a Skype screen share and we go through every question, every document, and I even assist with drafting the letters of explanation so that when people submit their application, they know that there's not going to be any mistakes in it because we've gone through it together, me and them. And that's a service that I charge $2,500 for. But I can tell you guys, the beauty of this whole process is that you control it. It's in your own MyCIC. I give you a use of representative form to upload. You disclose that I am working with you because that's what the law is and I would have it no other way. But you retain control over everything. And so for this, you get a free access. For the $2,500, you get a free access to the EE DIY guide, which is a regular $497 US value. Plus, there's the opportunities for emails, unlimited support. I love it. So that's an option that I give to people so that they don't run into the problem of filling in their own application and then having what's happened to Rohit here, realize you made all these mistakes. And so, like I said, I'm not a money-grubbing lawyer. I believe in what I offer. I'm excited and I love working with people. And if I could do reviews of Express Entry all day, that's what I would do. But if you guys just make sure that you get someone you trust to look over it for you. That's the most important thing. So that the little mistakes and the little errors that you make don't cost you your opportunity to immigrate to Canada. Okay, next question here. This one says, hello, I'm an architect. I have a regular job at a company and I also do freelance jobs. Okay. When I do freelance jobs, I usually get paid by cash or by checks. All right. But my question is, if I receive a check of $1,000 and deposit it into my bank account, do I have to explain the source of money in the proof of funds? And I deposit any amount of money I receive from freelance work in my bank account. Will that make it suspicious? This is an interesting question. And do I need to explain every time I deposit an amount like $1,000? No, immigration doesn't care. You can deposit whatever you want into your account. The key is that you can show that your proof of funds that you have in your account are actually available for you to settle in Canada. And when there's a large deposit of money, now when I say large, we're talking $10,000 or something like that, they're going to wonder where that cash came from. But everybody gets paid, right? So having employment income going in is not an issue at all. But if there's a big, huge lump sum dumped into your account, then they're going to question, is that a loan from someone? Did you just take out a loan? Where did it come from? And in those circumstances, that's why we often use gift deeds if it's not yours and someone just gave you the money. Also, if you have a situation like you do, Fouad, what I would do is, if you're concerned about these deposits into your account, they're obviously all going to show just straight cash deposit. You can just indicate this is from my freelance work. All right. And you didn't ask about whether or not this freelance work was actually a part of your actual work history and how to prove it and all those kinds of things. So I'm not going to address a self-employed work experience. But when it comes to bank, no, they don't care. But if you have a concern, you can always provide a letter of explanation. All right. Okay, and the last question here relates to spouses. And the age-old question that I've answered time and time again, it all comes down to adding a spouse onto your application. So this one is from Wahid, and he says, hi Mark, my query is regarding spouse, as I'm going to marry before 2 months of creating my EE profile. And we are done ECA and IELTS process before marriage doesn't matter. Does marriage certificate, translation of original certificate from Urdu to English, and also get from Union Council, as well as an FRC, family registration certificate, is it enough to prove marriage? Kindly let us know when you're coming live after getting people's suggestions. Okay, so Wahid, I can tell you that if you're getting married before you submit your profile, it's not a big deal. Obviously you're going to include your marriage certificate because that's what's specifically asked. You're going to list your spouse as accompanying. Your spouse is going to go through all the process, like you've already indicated here, ECA, IELTS. I presume they don't have Canadian work experience, and you're going to enter all that information in, and immigration will rarely come back and ask for proof of the genuineness of your marriage. However, they can come back and ask anything for clarification if they are uncertain about anything that you have put into your profile or your electronic application for permanent residence. And realistically, if you've been married before you submit your profile, that's less of a concern. But if it's only been a couple months, they could very well come back and ask for everything that they would in the context of a spousal sponsorship. So that's a possibility, but no two files are the same. And it just depends on the officer and whether or not they question or have doubts whether or not your relationship is actually genuine, or you're just marrying the person to secure permanent residence status in Canada. All right. Okay, so there's the answer to the last email question, which all of these are really, really great ones. And they led to some great conversation. I was able to teach about some things that I hadn't taught about before. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump back into our group, and I'm going to pull up our, pull up the live questions. So now is the time for you, if you'd like, to post a live comment, a live question, and I will answer these right on the fly. All right, so we're going to start here. If I scroll down, we're going to start with the very last one that's here, and this one is Amanat. And he says, my application has already crossed 7 months, and they said your file is in queue and review required. What can I do? Well, then do an access to information request. You'll need someone to be in Canada to do that. We offer that as a service to our clients. So we're happy to do that on your behalf, Amanat. But if you have another family member or someone who's in Canada, they can do that. And the actual processing fee is only about $5. So that's what I would recommend. And then you get a better idea of, maybe what's holding things up and what is actually being reviewed. Often it's work experience, but it could be anything. Depends on how you answered the questions. It depends upon a lot. If you're concerned, Amanat, then just book a consult and we can talk about it. But usually when it says review required, that does tend to mean that there are some issues that are arising. Okay. All right. So here's Afsar. He says, how are you doing? This question that I want to ask, in my opinion, has never been asked in your live Q&A. So I decided to be the first one to ask. All right. I'm getting excited. Maybe it's a question I can't answer. I'll sure try. Okay. So what is it? Oh, the suspense is killing me. Is it really true that if someone's application takes more than 18 months after an AOR, then she should file a writ of mandamus against IRCC through a lawyer in Canada? Once filed, I have heard that IRCC sends passport requests within a month. Can you please shed some light on it? Also, how much lawyers in Canada usually charge for filing it? Okay, you know what? I'll be honest. Afsar. You're 100% correct. That's what you do. You file a mandamus application to force the government to move forward. It's not fair to you if they're just sitting on it without taking any action. So you do an access to information request, you get the GCMS notes, and you take a look and see if there's been anything done. And if they're just sitting on it for like 18 months, that's like a year more than it normally would be. And so if they're sitting on it for that long, yes, the appropriate avenue is, in depending on the circumstances, is to file a mandamus application in federal court to basically force the government to process the application, right? Because it's not fair to hold people in limbo. So great, that's a good question. Hopefully not too many people are stuck in that situation, but I have heard, in some countries that is the case. Now, how much do lawyers in Canada usually charge for filing it? That's not something I can talk about here. I can't speak to other lawyers or anything like that. And these applications, because they are so unique, so specific, rarely lawyers, often they'll want to bill on an hourly basis. And if they do quote, they're not going to quote until after they've had a chance to actually look at the situation and see how much work it's actually going to take. And then they'll usually provide a quoted fee. All right. So great question. I love it, Afsar. Thank you. That is one I haven't answered before. All right. This one's from Carla. She says, "Hi, Mark. I just created my EE profile. Awesome. Way to go. Step one. I'm a bit confused with regards on how many work experience for my NOC 3211. So I had 1 year and 6 months gap. I was working, and these types of things, when we're talking about work history where it's really specific, these tend to be more individual-based questions, but let's see if we can try to help Carla here. So I was working from 2010 to 2014, then I changed career, different NOC from 2015 to 2016, and I finally went back to my original NOC from 2016 to present. Should I choose 6 years for the total number of experience?" Carla, it really comes down to the support you have for your work experience. If you are an individual who doesn't need any more than 3 years of skilled work experience within your federal skilled worker program eligibility assessment, so there's some selection criteria that are based out of a 100-point system that you have to pass initially within the federal skilled worker program. If you're above the 67-point threshold, well, 67 and above, out of 100 points, then you meet the eligibility assessment. Well, if you can meet that with just 3 years, then you don't need to prove any more than 3 years of skilled work experience abroad and in the same NOC. Well, let me qualify that. Even that doesn't necessarily need to be in the same NOC, but you need to have at least 1 year continuous full-time employment that's paid in the same NOC to meet the minimum eligibility threshold for the federal skilled worker program. Then you have to meet the point threshold of 67 out of 100. And I won't take a ton of time, but let's just jump in just really quick because I know other people are going to have this question. So if we go to the Federal Skilled Worker Program eligibility, and I'll just pull it up here so everybody can see it, you'll see that when you're going through this process, there are selection factors right at the top. So you go through and you have to meet these selection factors and meet the 67-point threshold, which is the pass mark right here out of 100 points. So if you have that, great. But the minimum requirements for skilled work experience is that you have to have work experience that's skilled, obviously, and meet the requirements of the NOC code for those positions. So all the duties in the lead statement, and then all the essential duties and most of the main duties, which the regulations specifically state a substantial number of these main duties. Then it has to be in the same job, okay? Within the last 10 years, it has to be paid. And then here's the thing that lots of people get confused about. 1 year continuous full-time work experience, or you can also do it, so full-time, which is 30 hours a week, or you could accumulate it via part-time over essentially 2 years at 15 hours a week, or you can do it combined, working 2 jobs for 2 different companies doing the same thing, remember, in the same NOC. Once you have met this 1 year of skilled work experience, okay, that we were talking about here, once you've got that at least 1 year, then it's open season. So to accumulate your comprehensive ranking system scores, at least to maximize your work experience for the comprehensive ranking system assessment, all you need is 3 years. Once you've got 3 years of foreign work experience, you're maxed out. So in your situation, and I'll just jump back to here. So, and hopefully it hasn't jumped too far that I've lost the question. I'll just go back here. There's lots. Okay. So in the case of Carla here, if you have already accumulated the 3 years with your working from 2010 to 2014 with your NOC 3211, you actually don't need to provide any other work experience than that. You list your work history, just that occupation that provides, well, in this case, it could be up to 4 years. And then once you've got that listed in your work history, you'll just make sure to identify all the other work history that you've done in your personal history section. And so you're not going to pretend you didn't work in those positions. No, but in the work history section, you only need to list the work history that you want to count towards the comprehensive ranking system and your eligibility under the Federal Skilled Worker Program, the CEC, or the Federal Skilled Trade Program. So there you have it. So you don't need to worry about it. In terms of your work history, if you want to list all of it, then you can. It doesn't make a difference. You're going to list 3211 as your primary knock, and then from there you're going to go forward and add the other work history regardless of the knock code. It doesn't matter as long as it's skilled work, knock 0A or B. Skill level 0A or B. All right, great. Okay, Rohit says, hi Mark, I missed my question. Guess we'll have to wait till the live feed ends to watch it. Yes, Rohit. And actually, if you're watching now, I actually didn't answer your question because it was too specific, my friend. And the reality is I need to look at what you've got going on in order to be able to assess, to advise you on what you actually need to do in correcting the mistakes that you found in your EAPR. I need to look at things more closely to determine what really is an issue and what isn't. And what your question helped me to do for the other people is just to advise them on the options that are available for them when they do find problems with their EAPR after they have submitted it. Okay. So now we've got Fatima here. Hi, sir. I just had an interview in February after submission of my profile in 2014. Now they will let me know of status within 6 weeks. Is there any chance of rejection of my application? Applied on Federal Skilled Worker Program 2014. My goodness, Fatima. I can't answer that, but that application, that was before Express Entry. I can't even answer because ultimately it all comes down to what was said in the interview. So, wow, I wish you all the best, but that is an eternity that you've had that application pending if it really was 2014, because Express Entry was first started January 1st, 2015. Okay, Rohit says, thanks for answering the queries. You bet. Okay, Savandi says, what counts as 2 or more qualifications? In depth, please. Thank you. What counts as 2 or more qualifications is getting an ECA that states one of your credentials is at least a 3-year or more post-secondary educational, and then the other credential, what I usually go by is that it's at least a year. Now, ultimately, officers, you could take a 1-year program in 8 months, right? So it could be less, but usually that 2 or more credentials usually relates to a second program of at least a year. All right, at least this it's a 1-year program essentially. Okay. And the ECA is the thing that drives the ship. So you provide your educational credentials to one of the educational credential assessment agencies, and they will spit out the report that tells you exactly what you've got. However, Savandi, I'm going to show you something that could be of help to you if you're not quite sure when you're trying to read your educational credential assessment, the actual form. I'm going to share my screen again, and I'm going to go over here, and I'm just going to type in. I'm going to see if I can find it. ECA, EE, IRCC. Let's see if I can pull it up here. Okay, let's try this one. Yes, I guessed right. Woohoo! Awesome. Maybe Stephanie, you can find this one here and just post that link in the feed for people who are watching. In particular, let's just see here. Who was I talking to? I was talking to. It always disappears whenever you can see what I'm dealing with, you guys. Okay, who was it that I answered the question to? Savandi, right here. Okay, this is for you, Savandi. So you go to this site, Educational Assessments, what is it? And it gives you what your report means right here. So if you click on it, you can actually search through here to determine what, if you're assessing it for the ranking, comprehensive ranking system, you'd click here, and then you click see points. And then here in this filter, you can type in what you have. And then it will tell you what it is. So if you type in 2, if it says 2 or more, okay. So you can see here, there's a couple different things. 3-year or more certificate, diploma, or degree, plus applied bachelor's degree. As an example, equates to, and you can see right here, within the Express Entry profile, 2 or more certificates. It tells you how many points would be awarded if you are with a spouse or without a spouse. And don't even get me started with the prejudice that married couples have within Express Entry. It's really cruel and unfair as far as I'm concerned, but it's a reality. All right. So there you can go to get all of the information that you're looking for answered about ECAs and trying to figure out what your report actually means. So thank you, Savani. That was a great question. All right. So now I'm going to go back here to my ugly mug. Okay, so this one here is Ali. Hi, Mark. If an applicant has an experience in 2 different NOCs, let's say in one NOC for 3 years, then changes his job and the new job NOC is different than the previous job, then which NOC should be selected and what amount of experience will be considered? Well, you just need to choose one as your primary NOC, okay? And that one needs to be at least 1 year continuous, full-time, skilled, paid work experience, just like I explained within the Federal Skilled Worker Program eligibility, or meet the definition of the Canadian Experience class, meet the eligibility requirements. But when it comes to including multiple NOCs, once you've got that 1 year under one primary NOC, then you can add pieces from other work histories in other NOCs. And so, like I said before, you really only need a maximum of 3 years to maximize your comprehensive ranking system points under the Federal Skilled Worker Program. But if you are, that's really it, as long as you meet the eligibility assessment. And so you can, once you've got that 1 year met, you can add work history from other sections, other NOC descriptions and other jobs, even for periods less than a year, and you can build those up. And there can be gaps in them. So it doesn't have to be continuous. So it's quite flexible once you meet the initial eligibility assessment. All right. Great question, Ali. Okay. Okay. And then FOD here, I answered your question already. Naveen. Okay. Naveen says, hi, Mark. Hope you are fine. I'm a digital marketing professional with 6 years experience in India. I'm planning for a provincial nominee program. Is it easy to get PNP since my CRS is 345? So it's difficult to apply for direct express entry. So I thought to do a year study to gain some points. So is this the right way? Naveen, I actually recommend that you book a consult with me, because when your score is under really even 440 points, your likelihood of qualifying independently to immigrate to Canada is really, really low. Now, if you have connections with some provinces, that can increase your chances. If you're just so fortunate that you stumble upon the link when they open up a new occupation in demand program like the Nova Scotia PNP Category B, when it opens up and you're fast and you can get it in, or one of the other programs like PEI or even Saskatchewan, for instance, they're only open for very, very small periods of time. And if you're so lucky that you can get in, then that's great with your occupation. But when you're sitting at 345, the decision to choose to go to school in Canada is a very comprehensive one. It's a very complex one. And you have to take into a lot of factors: your age, the program that you want to study in. You have to also factor in whether or not it's actually going to make a difference for you, whether the added points and the cost and the time is going to actually result in you getting more comprehensive ranking points versus losing points for age. All right. So Naveen, I actually recommend that you book a consult, and maybe Stephanie, you can just, under Naveen Ganesh Alwala's post, his comment here, you can just reply with the link to our consult booking link on our website. Okay, Sayem says, thanks to your lovely sessions, Mark Holthy, and all the cooperative members. I'm a physician from Bangladesh. I've applied through EE myself. Comprehensive rank. Your confirmation of permanent residence was received within 6 months. Thanks again. Awesome. Thanks, Sayem, for coming on and for commenting. I'm so glad that the site was helpful for you, that you're able to get through. That's so awesome. You'll have to comment here, Sayem, when you're actually planning on coming to Canada and where you're going to live. Everybody, I'm sure, would be really excited to hear that. Okay, Srab. Hi, Srab. Okay. Urfa says, if duties are the same, does it make a difference that I was licensed or not as my profession is regulated? No, it does not. It does not make a difference at all, Urfa, as long as it wasn't in Canada. And so Canada doesn't look into the licensing requirements. All they look at is the duties that you performed. And Urfa, I'll see if I'm going to share my screen again, and I'm going to go right back to the eligibility assessment for the Federal Skilled Worker Program. And once again, I want to show you this program right here. So this is the federal program, which is probably the one that applies to you. If you go down and you look here, how this program works, so you'll see right here below the what we talked about, the pass mark, the 67 points. Actually, no, I skipped past it. Let me just make sure I can find it. Okay, right here, sorry. So right here under the minimum requirements, you can see in order to count your skilled work experience, these are the instructions. Now I could take you to the regulations, the actual law, but these aren't too bad. They're pretty good at giving you an overview of what you need to actually get credit for your work experience. But licensing is not a factor here. So it has to be skill level A, 0A or 0A or B, and then you must show that while working in your primary occupation, you perform the duties set out in the lead statement of the occupational description of the NOC right here, and all the essential duties and most of the main duties listed. So what that means is a substantial number of those main duties. And so if you look here and we open this up, and I'll just choose, I'll go to NOC 2016, and then we'll open this up. And this is the occupational. If you look right here, we'll go back here. This right here is the occupational description in the NOC that it's referring to. It's this, and they always use right now the 2016 version. So if I want to type in something, I'll say lawyer. Okay, so we'll just search for lawyer. So here's lawyers and Quebec notaries. So the lead statement you can see right here is this. And so it says that you need to perform the duties set out in the lead statement. Okay, so these are them. So it lists exactly what I need to do, and I won't read through all of these. Then the next thing it says is that you need to have performed all of the essential duties and most of the main duties listed. So if you go here and then you scroll down, here are the main duties. Okay, so there we go. So that's what it's describing right there for the duties, and you have to be able to show that you've performed a substantial number of these, which is right around 75%. You know, it could be a little bit less, could be a little bit more, but that's kind of the thing. Now I want to show you may act as mediator, may act as executor. Well, these are optional. They're not mandatory. And so I don't always include those in the list when I'm calculating percentages. You know, I'm performing 75% of this. I will base it on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 titles. So maybe I'll go for 4 out of the 6. I won't base it on 8 because technically these are a may. Now, totally, if you've completed these optional duties, that's great. You can add them to the list, but I don't factor those in when I'm considering what is substantial. All right, so that's what you have to perform. And the last thing I want to show you down here is the employment requirements. And some of those requirements are education and licensing, okay? And so if you want to be a lawyer, you have to have your undergrad, you have to complete the program and complete the bar exam and a period of articling. And so you have to be, you actually have to complete all of that in order to be licensed to practice law in Canada. And it's a big deal. It's a long haul and it's not easy to get through. All right, so there is those questions. Awesome, good one. Okay, so I'm gonna jump back again to the questions and see if I can find them as they're pouring in here. All right, so this one, the next one on our list is, wow, I've got a lot of questions. I'm definitely not gonna be able to get to everybody's today. I gotta figure out where I left off with. Okay, so Rohit says, what would be a good time to order GCMS notes in my situation to see if there's any issues? Right now. I would do it right now, Rohit. At least, well, actually, no, I stand corrected. Rohit, it just depends because hopefully you kept a copy of your EAPR, but ultimately the key when it's determining whether or not to proceed, it really just depends on the stage in which you're at. And it's just too complicated, Rohit, to be able to give you direct advice. But there's no harm. You can request GCMS notes whenever you want to. You can request them multiple times. So there's no way of knowing for certain. Okay. Parminder says, hey, Mark, does ICCRC count less than 1 year experience in secondary NOC? Okay. So it's actually IRCC. ICCRC is the consultant regulatory body. So I'm assuming you meant IRCC, Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada. Okay, so hey Mark, does ICCRC count less than 1 year experience in secondary NOC? Yeah, it does, but you have to. But basically, if you're at 1 year and you only have 8 months, you're only going to get 1 year of credit for work experience. You actually have to have 2, so you can take 2 or multiple secondary experiences for multiple employers to accumulate and add up to the remaining 3 that you're really shooting for. Okay. Okay, Yasin says, "Hi Mark, I can see you're doing well today. First of all, thank you very much for this session. My father's brother, my uncle, is living in Canada with his family. Can I claim points for it as blood relatives for the Express Entry program? I really hope you say yes. If so, my score becomes 504 and I can submit my application for EE right away." Okay, the reality is, Yasin, if adding your father's brother gave you any points, it would only be 15 points. And so without those 15 points, you would still be, well, what is that? 85. You would still be at like 489 points, probably calculating wrong here, which would get you qualified regardless. So your question here is not it's not a deal breaker with getting your comprehensive ranking system high enough to get an ITA. In your case, the answer is actually no. It has to be a sibling, your sibling that's in Canada, in order to get those extra 15 points. So an uncle doesn't count. Okay, Amanat, let's see if we can whip through some of these quickly here at the end. Okay, so Amanat says, "Thanks, sir. I have 7 months experience in one knock and 2.5 years another." Yeah, so if you've got 2.5 years, and so if you have 7 months in one knock and 2.5 years in another, will CIC count my total experience as 3 years or not? Will they account 7 months experience? Yes, they will take the 2.5 years from your other one, and they will add in the 7 months extra, which should take you over 3 years. So I have to answer that it probably should be yes. Annie says, "Hi Mark." Hi. Parminder says, "Hey Mark, could you help me out with this, please? This email is in relation to your recent inquiry regarding your permanent resident application made to the RC call center. Your application is with our office and is currently in queue for review by an officer. You will be contacted further in due course. Thank you for your continued patience." Okay, well, this just means that it's being processed. So there's nothing much that I can add, Parminder. If it actually, for further review, if it says that kind of almost implies that there has to be a secondary level. It's been escalated to a more senior officer to investigate something that they feel is fraudulent or not complete or something like that. But just it's in queue for review by an officer means that it hasn't really even gotten to an officer yet. It's still in the queue waiting to be assigned. At least that's based on what you've told me there. Okay, so this one says, and let's see, time-wise, we are about 3 minutes out. So I've got about three more minutes. "Hello, Mr. Mark. I'd like to get more info about the new immigration program, Rural and Northern Immigration Pilot. When is the government going to start accepting applications through this program, and what are the expected, in your view, differences between it and E? Thanks a lot." Okay, it's pretty simple, Hamu. This is a community-driven program, and I've gone through and looked at it at length. The community itself drives the ship. So the right now, as far as we know about the program, the communities, the rural communities, are the ones that will identify people and then support their applications. Ultimately, how it links with Express Entry, that's to be determined. But it's the big difference is with Express Entry, you're applying, you're submitting the application. But with this rural and northern immigration pilot, it's the communities that are driving the ship. So you still need to have some kind of a connection. All right. Okay. Okay. Samrat says, "Hi, Mark." Okay. Kara says, "Does common law status affect the length of time for processing? How do you prove common law?" Well, Kara, that's a whole different discussion in terms of proving common law. And if you want to go, you can go to the IRCC website and go to the spousal sponsorship process and go to the document checklist for that, for common law, and you'll see, how to prove your common law. You provide documents that all support those kinds of things. Now, when it comes to filing your application and proving common law within Express Entry, there really isn't anything that they ask for that. You just disclose your spouse as being common law, and then if they have any doubts or questions about whether or not they really are, then they'll send a request letter for you to provide that information. Okay. Frederick says, "Hi, Sir Mark. How can I go to Canada with my parent?" Can't answer that, my friend. Not Express Entry related. If you're with your parents, if you want to accompany them, you have to be under the age of 22. If you're 22, you're too old. So Susan says, hi, Mark. I may have asked this before. Do I need a work permit and job for the express entry notice of interest for AINP? It's interesting, Susan. I recently had someone post a question or post a comment within our group where they said that they actually received a notification of interest from the Alberta Immigrant Nominee Program without a job offer in Alberta. So I'm not sure exactly if that's really the case, or because I didn't see it. I just had heard someone comment that they had. So it theoretically, in my discussions with the program manager back in January, when I did a presentation to our local Canadian Bar Association on the Alberta Immigrant Nominee Program, I had a nice long call with the program manager, and that was one of the questions that I asked. And he did say if they didn't have a lot of people applying through the other streams, then potentially they could reach out to someone who's not in Alberta, that doesn't have a connection, but just has the right work experience that Alberta is looking for and could get an NOI. So good question. Dada, hello. All right. Okay, and then Verinder here says, hi, Mark. One of my friends wanted to add her spouse in her express entry profile. She's at the 4-month period after receiving her AOR. She married in the 3rd month. She raised web form, received reply to send the basic details, name, profile name, number, etc. on the Ottawa email. It has been more than 14 days. No reply received yet. What can be done? Okay, I'm a little bit confused here. She raised the web form, received reply to send the basic details. Okay, yeah, it just takes time. It has to. The officer who's adjudicating it is going to be like, seriously, why in the world are you doing this to me? Because it adds a whole bunch more work. And in all honesty, you pretty much can add another 6 months processing on for the whole process to add a spouse. And so they're going to ask for all the same information. They're going to provide the spousal kit instructions, and I'll try to do a separate Q&A. Actually, you know what? I think I might just build it into the course. I think this would be a good one to add into my Express Entry Complete Step-by-Step Guide course. I think I'm going to build that in there because that takes a lot of time to do it, and there's value to it. And so, but ultimately what that kit asks for is it's just genuineness information about the relationship, and it's quite a bit. So I'd recommend, in these cases, 14 days is nothing. It could be a month before they heard a reply. So I just continue to be patient. Okay, Samrat says, I just have a question about proof of funds. You mentioned that asset-backed loan does not matter much if the amount is less. However, I have an unsecured loan of 10,000 Canadian and I have liquid cash of around 20. I am applying along with my spouse, so would need around 16,000. Please advise. Well, Samrat, at the end of the day, the government can take into consideration all of your finances. So you disclose everything. You show that you have the ability to settle. You've got the 16,000 plus, whatever it may be for a couple, that you've got the cash in your account. And this other unsecured loan, well, often they'll look at the payments, and I would draw it out for them. I would say, look, this $10,000 loan, there's $500 a month payments, and I'll have no problem meeting that while settling in Canada. And so the loan is not going to compromise my ability to use the $16,000 cash to actually settle. All right, so that's how I would answer that. And we are into overtime now, so I'll finish off with Taba's question here. And Taba says, hi, Mark, I have experience, but I haven't certificate IELTS score. What information you have to spread to the person without IELTS will be entered to condition. Okay, a little bit confusing, Taba, but the short answer is don't do anything until you've written your IELTS, because there's no point unless you know exactly what your language scores are. And in fact, I would actually argue that first you want to make sure that you have 1 year of skilled work experience, because if you don't have that, you're not getting past anything. And you also want to make sure that you're not otherwise inadmissible to Canada because of a prior police certificate, criminal conviction, or a medical issue, or you've been barred from Canada. So I check those first, then write the IELTS. All right. Okay, guys, this was a great EE Live Q&A. I want to thank everybody who's participated and been involved. Don't forget, as I wrap up here, I'm going to share my screen again. I'm going to go back to our page here. I'm going to turn all of your attention back to, at the very beginning here, the announcement section, and you can find it on your phone. It's right at the top of the Express Entry Law private Facebook group site. And vote. Cast your vote now. as to the time that you want me to do these EE Live Q&As. Because right now it looks like Thursday afternoons at 3 p.m. Mountain Standard Time will be the time. Because going forward, this right now, I have another conflict that's coming up, and I won't be able to do my EE Live Q&As anymore on Tuesday at noon. So share the word with everybody else. And while I'm here, I'll go to all of you Canadian Immigration Institute people who are wondering how to watch this live. You come right here, you follow the instructions like these people, except they need to answer the question. So Islam didn't, so I decline entry. Munib says, yep, answered. Kazi, want to know more about Express Entry? I would have liked him to have answered the first two questions, but I'll give him an approval. And then this one, 2 out of 3, well, not bad. I'll approve that one. And I don't really know, Francino, why do you want to join this group for speaking English? I don't know why people would want to join for speaking English. That doesn't really make any sense. So I'm going to decline that one. And then Siam also didn't answer the question, so I will decline again. And that's basically how I screen out people and how I determine who's going to come in and who isn't. So guys, when you look, and if I flip back here, if you look to this group that we have here, there are, let's see here. This is always messing around with me sometimes. It doesn't show me the top. Right here, we are currently sitting at 120,333 members, and every single member was accepted their invitation, just like these people. And lo and behold, I have another person wanting to join. And once again, this person was invited by someone, so I will approve them if they've been invited by a trusted member of the group. All right, so that's basically it for today, guys. Thanks so much for joining. As always, I want to let everybody know that if you, like the wonderful people here, let's see, let me just find their questions. I've got all my pages are all flipped around. Tom and Sally from Melbourne, Australia, who gave an awesome testimonial that was unsolicited about the Express Entry Complete Step-by-Step Guide to Doing It Yourself. If you guys would like to have access to that, this is the time where I tell you about a nice little access code that will give you 50% off the full-time rate. So if you, and I'll close out of here, go to CanadianImmigrationInstitute.com. So that's what you type in. So I'll type it in again, CanadianImmigrationInstitute.com. Hopefully you can see this on your screens and hit enter. It will take you right here. Then you click on Enroll in Course, and then you're going to select the one-time purchase lifetime access. There's also the monthly membership subscription, or you can do the payment plan. But you click on Enroll, and then once you're here, this will open up. You'll see that the lifetime access is usually $497, but there's a little orange button here that says Add Coupon. So those of you faithful followers who are watching this video, if you type in here EEDIY 50%, the percent sign, and apply, bang, you get 50% off, and you can have lifetime access to the course for $248.50 US. All right, so there we have it. I hope that you guys have enjoyed this episode of the Express Entry Live Q&A. Thanks to Stephanie, who's been hanging out and helping me with this. Thanks for all of you who have been asking questions live, and for all of you who submitted a question previously. If you personally would like to have your question answered, you are going to type EE Live Q&A in the subject line of your email, and you're going to send that email right here to my assistant, Stephanie, at stringham.ca, and you can have your question considered for an upcoming episode of the Express Entry Live Q&A right on the Express Entry Law private Facebook group. All right, guys, thanks so much for tuning in, and we will see you, well, we'll see when it is, because it's all going to depend on your vote. Take care. Bye.